Boys and girls, this is Mr. Gamble. Hope you're doing well. I'm continuing now to read from the chapter book, The Jacket by Andrew Clements. There are 6 chapters in the book, 89 pages, and today I'm going to finish chapter number 1. You may remember in our opening that Phil was in the 6th grade and his little brother was named Jimmy. And there was a reason that Phil could not be late to school. Does anybody remember what that reason was? Well, if he got another tardy, he would get 2 detentions. That means he would probably have to stay after school late or come in early, maybe as some type of consequence. Well, Phil is looking for his brother Jimmy, and he sees a jacket that only his brother Jimmy, he thinks, has, because he forgot his money. Jimmy forgot his money, lunch money, back home. So let's see what happens as we pick up now with the reading. But it wasn't Jimmy. It was someone Phil had never seen before. A black kid wearing Jimmy's jacket. Phil grabbed the collar and said, "Hey, this is my brother's jacket. Where is he? How'd you get this from him?" The other boy struggled, trying to pull away. "What are you talking about? Let go of me. This is my jacket. I don't even know your brother." The kid twisted and turned to break free, but Phil was a lot bigger and stronger. "You tell me where my brother's at or I'm gonna—" "Boys, you stop it right now." Mrs. Atkin came striding through the crowd that had gathered, pushing kids out of her way with her left hand and pointing at Phil with the other one. "You let go of him and I mean it." Drawn by Mrs. Atkin's voice, 3 or 4 other teachers stepped out into the hallway. Phil let go of the jacket, and the younger boy jerked around to face him, his fists up, his eyes narrowed. Mrs. Atkin stepped between them and said to the younger boy, "Daniel, you put your hands down, and all the rest of you kids go on about your business. Get your things put away and get to your rooms. Go on, there's nothing happening here." Then glaring at Phil and the smaller boy, she said, "You two come with me." The other teachers were moving around in the hallway now, talking to kids, quieting everyone down. Phil and Daniel followed Mrs. Atkin along the hall, and Phil knew where they were headed, straight to the office. He thought, now I'm going to flunk out for sure. At the office door, Mrs. Atkins stopped and herded the boys in ahead of her. I wonder what the word herded means. She's probably getting them in there very fast, right? Okay. "Mrs. Cormier, sorry to start your day like this, but I found these 2 going at it down the 4th grade hall." I think Mrs. Cormier may be the, what do you think, principal? "I've got to get back to my room before something else breaks loose." The principal still had her coat on from being out at the curb with the buses. She frowned at the boys and pointed toward her office. "Walk in and sit down, and I don't want you two to even look at each other. Is that clear?" Both of them nodded and walked into her office. A minute later, Mrs. Cormier came in and sat down behind her desk. It's a picture. She motioned to Phil, who had taken a chair against the wall. "Come over here and sit in front of me. I want to be able to look each of you in the eye." Daniel kept looking straight ahead at Mrs. Cormier. When Phil was seated, she said, "Phil, you've got no business being in the 4-5 hall in the morning." You remember that Phil was in the 6th grade, okay? "Why were you there?" "My brother Jimmy forgot his lunch money, and I still have to give it to him." Mrs. Cormier nodded. "All right, that makes sense. Here," she said, putting out her hand. "Give me his money, and I'll make sure he gets it." Phil dug in his pocket and gave the coins to the principal. She put them on her desk and then turned to the other boy. "Okay, Daniel, you first. What happened?" "What happened is I'm talking with my friends, and this kid comes and grabs me and starts yelling at me. I've never seen him before. I didn't do a thing. Mrs. Cormier turned to Phil. Did you grab him, Phil? Yeah, 'cause he stole my brother's jacket. That's my old jacket, and now it's my brother's. And this kid stole it, so I grabbed him. Liar! Daniel jumped to his feet and faced Phil, his fists clenched. I never stole a thing. My grandma gave me this jacket for my birthday, and that's the truth, so you stop saying that. Daniel, said Mrs. Cormier sharply, you sit down and stay put. Mrs. Cormier swept her eyes between the boys. I think this is a simple misunderstanding. Phil, isn't it possible that Daniel happens to have a jacket just like your brother's? Phil shook his head forcefully. No way. My mom bought that jacket when she went to Italy, and she brought it back for me. Go ahead, look at the label inside the neck. It's going to say Risi di Roma. That's because she got it in Rome. Go ahead and look, that's my jacket. Mrs. Cormier stood up and walked around to the front of her desk. May I look at the label, Daniel? Here you can see the principal, Mrs. Cormier, looking at the label. It looks like she sees the Risi part on there. Let's see what happens here. Okay. Mrs. Cormier stood up and walked around to the front of her desk. May I look at the label, Daniel? He shrugged and stuck his lower lip out. I don't care, because this isn't his jacket. The principal gently pulled the collar off the jacket back and then twisted her neck and adjusted her glasses. Her eyebrows shot up. It says, Risi di Roma. See, I told you so, said Phil triumphantly. He stole it. Did not, you big liar? And if Mrs. Cormier hadn't been on her feet to catch him, Daniel would have been on top of Phil, fist swinging. She pushed him back into his chair and shouted, Silence! Not another word, either of you! Calling to the secretary through the open door, she said, Mrs. Donny, get me the emergency cards for Philip Morelli and Daniel Taylor, would you? Right away. Wonder what she's getting ready to do here. If he said call home, you're right. 30 seconds later, Mrs. Cormier was dialing her phone, then smiling and speaking. Mrs. Taylor, this is Mrs. Cormier, the principal at Daniel's school. No, he's fine, but there's been a disagreement this morning, and he's in the middle of it. It's about a jacket, the one Daniel says he got for his birthday. Another boy is here, and he says the jacket belongs to him. Can you tell me anything else that might help? Yes. Oh, I see. So, it was a gift. Yes, I see. Well, that's it then. I'm awfully sorry to have bothered you. Yes, you too. Goodbye. Daniel turned to Phil. See, I told you so. It was a gift for me. Mrs. Cormier said, It turns out you're both right, boys. Someone gave that jacket to your grandmother, Daniel, and then she gave it to you. Phil made a face. Gave it to his grandmother? How come? Mrs. Cormier started to say something, then stopped, smiled awkwardly, and said, Well, really, I think it was just to be kind. That's all. Something registered in Phil's mind, and his mouth dropped open. Turning to Daniel, he asked, Who's your grandma? What's her name? Daniel curled his lip. None of your business. But her name's Lucy. Lucy Taylor. Phil's face reddened. Hey, look, I'm sorry I grabbed you, okay? You're right. It's your jacket. What? Daniel looked sideways at Phil, cocking his head as if he hadn't heard clearly. You come and almost pull this thing off my back, and now you say just keep it? What's that about? Phil looked at the floor. It's just that, like I think I know your grandma, that's all. So the jacket's yours. Daniel frowned and narrowed his eyes. You know my grandma, right? He smiled, taunting Phil. Yeah, like, how you gonna know my grandma? Maybe you see her when you go to the same beauty parlor she does, huh? That it? Mrs. Cormier stood up and said, "Boys, that's enough. This is all settled. Daniel, Phil said he's sorry, and we know the jacket is yours. So both of you run along to class now. Mrs. Donnie will give you notes for your teachers." Daniel stood up. He stuck his chin out and said, "Fine with me, because this boy just keeps telling lies and lies. Like how he knows my grandma." "I do too know her," Phil almost shouted. "I'm not a liar. I see her all the time because she's my mom's cleaning lady." The words seemed to echo off the walls. Daniel looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. He backed toward the office door, his face working angrily. He yanked the jacket open, pulled himself free of it, and threw it on the floor at Phil's feet. "There's your jacket. You take it and you tell your mama that my grandma and me don't need nobody being kind to us." And looking at Mrs. Cormier, he snarled, "Nobody." Well, boys and girls, thank you for joining me for the completion of Chapter 1 of The Jacket. And the next time we get together, we'll start Chapter 2, which is called Friends with Everybody. Thank you.